Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Blake Williams. Blake started his professional career working alongside his father at the family's home inspection and pest control businesses from 1998 to 2009. Along with his wife, Angela, Blake then co-founded Super Inspector in 2013. Combining his industry expertise with Angela's sales acumen, Blake has helped build Super Inspector with the vision of creating Texas's largest inspection company alongside vertically aligned real estate service companies. Since hiring their first team member in 2013, Blake has overseen the growth of the company, now operating as Super Team Services, and employs over 100 team members across 5 states and 6 divisions. The company achieved over $10 million in sales by 2022, a testament to its ongoing success and expansion. I'm excited to have Blake on the show today to share his perspective on what it takes to grow a business following a bold vision and overcoming obstacles and roadblocks along the way. And with that, Blake Williams, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Glad to be here.
Man, I'm thrilled to have you here, my friend. Blake and I have gotten to know each other through a networking group that we're part of called GoBundance, and it's been a true pleasure and an honor to get to know you, my friend. You're a good man, and it's we had to do a little hunting together recently, which was a lot of fun, and I had an opportunity to speak with your group not that long ago, and that was also an honor and super fun. So this will be another great conversation, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that trip. I really enjoyed it, and the GoBundance group has just brought a lot of value with great people like you, and along with the rest of the crew. It's been fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I agree. It's a great group of guys and great conversations and real opportunities for growth. And it's I wouldn't be where I'm at in my entrepreneurial journey that's younger than yours, right? So I've been doing this now on my own for coming up on 4 years. And GoBundance has been really essential to me just in understanding how entrepreneurs think, understanding how I need to be kind of viewing different things, and certainly the opportunity to level up and just continue to push into new areas of growth. It's been really good.
Yeah, it's a really different, the entrepreneurial mindset is, it's really different. It's something that's learned, it's a skill, but it's really just a different way of thinking about things. And it becomes very obvious when you're in a group of entrepreneurs like GoBundance, and then you go back to one of your old groups where everybody has a job. And just the conversation is just really different. And you can tell by the conversation, the mindset and the way that they think about things and see things comes from a totally different perspective.
Yeah, it's really true. And I don't know, did you, and we'll get into this in your story as far as if you had a W-2 at some point, or if you were always in entrepreneurial ventures with your family before even starting your own. But what do you, when you say it's different, because I agree, it's different mindset, what do you see as like the biggest signs that it's different way of thinking?
Yeah, so usually when you're in a job, you're thinking about how can I move up in the company? Mm-hmm. What can the company do for me? Where is my career going? And especially when you get at, say in the hourly employee ranks. So when I first started on my own in the inspection business, I worked part-time at Home Depot. And I would go to work and I would just listen to all they wouldn't give me a day off, or they denied my vacation, or the conversation was always about, the company's doing me wrong. Now, as you get up in the middle management and executive management, then you get into a lot of politics and people trying to advance themselves and advance a career and maintain their place within that hierarchy. So trying to do that means I have to look good all the time. I have to make sure that I'm not looking bad to my superiors. I have to make sure that I'm performing and that they know that I'm performing. And so from that perspective, it gets very political. And entrepreneurs just typically don't have a lot of time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. It's insightful what you share there, because I was putting myself back thinking about some of my corporate years, and there were many, many, many years. I did decades in both large companies and startups, and I think you've hit upon something there about the entrepreneurial mindset, especially when I think about the group that we spend time with, Echo Abundance. It's the willingness to give first is a common thread. And I'm sure it's not 100%, but it's this idea that, we want to be givers first, look for ways to add value and give to others, with the idea that at some point that's going to come back, certainly, but really look to be a helper and a giver and share what knowledge you had, experiences you've had, et cetera. And that seems to be far more rare in when you're working for somebody else. And I don't, again, I've had great relationships from my corporate years too. I've great people, great human beings along the way. And yet as a broad brush, what I would say is I agree with what you're saying, which is this idea that if I'm going to move up, I've got to be really focused on me. And if I'm not, I can get hurt by that. And I experienced that, right? I experienced what it is to be hurt along a career trajectory, right? Because of maybe being too innocent or too naive about how things would shake out. And you almost can't have that attitude in a corporate world and survive, or at least thrive without it.
Yeah, and then from an entrepreneurial mindset, we're looking to make mistakes, right? We're looking to push the envelope far enough where we can make a mistake and learn from it, and then push past it. And and entrepreneurs understand that you have to fail to succeed, and failure never looks that great in a corporate environment, unless there are a lot of companies that have a great culture, and we try to have that culture here at Super Team Services, where we're going to celebrate those mistakes, but it just doesn't always work out that way. We give a lot of lip service to that, but then it's like, that was not a good mistake. And so it's hard to maintain that in a corporate culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you said there, I hadn't really considered that, but you stepped in. We're talking about being an entrepreneur and how it's different than in corporate life, and yet your employees are living a corporate life or an employed W-2 life, while you're living the life of the risk taker, the entrepreneur, the one who's who's kind of got himself out there. And so how do you do that? How do you create an environment where it's not what we're describing, from a corporate perspective, and it's a place where your employees can feel like, man, I can take risks, I can thrive, it's okay. And yet as the guy that's signing the checks and has his name on all the, that's on all the leases, that's guaranteeing whatever, that's hard when people are making mistakes and your name's attached to it. Right. So how do you do it in a way that doesn't damage you, the company, all that, allow people to make mistakes and take risks in a way that's still manageable, right? As the guy at the front.
Yeah, and what we try to do is we try to create, we call it entrepreneurship within our company. So we try to give everybody an opportunity. We say, build your own business inside of our business. We're going to give you a platform from which to do that. Some people really take advantage of that and do well, and some people, they just do what they need to do and they perform well, but they're not really building inside the business. And especially for like in our home inspection business, our home inspectors get paid a straight commission. They get a percentage of the fee for the inspections that they do. We also give them control over their schedule. They can take off whenever they want. Now, they don't get paid when they take off. There's no paid time off. So the type of person that we're attracting is more entrepreneurial, but maybe not all the way the risk taker. And we also give them opportunities. If you get requested to do an inspection, either from a client or from a realtor, you get extra compensation for that. You get a 3% bonus. And so then we tell them, hey, if you want more work, some of the things that you can do is drop by this real estate office and talk to some realtors, or go with me to this event and talk to some realtors, or we have classes that you can teach, continuing education classes for realtors, and the inspectors can teach those. They're usually just 1 hour deals. And you don't have to do that, but those are options for you if you want to do more inspections and if you want to get more business. And so we kind of try to give that platform. And the more work you do, the more you make. And we have some guys that make 150 grand a year. We have other guys that make about 60, but they're not really interested. They just, whatever inspections you give me, that's great. I'll go do them, and then I'm going to go home. And both are fine. It's a choice, but we like having people that have a little bit of an entrepreneurial bent inside the business. I think it drives everybody a little bit, drives for quality, and kind of what you were talking about earlier, the give first mindset. We really preach that a lot. And I see that as really making investments. When you give first, what you're doing is making investments into those relationships, and that's what's going to pay off. And so we always tell our people, just try to be helpful, no matter what it is. Just try to be helpful. And even if it's something outside of what we do, we had an inspector in Kansas City who was talking to a realtor, and realtor's like, well, I got to go to my lake house this weekend. I'm putting new windows in it. And he was just like, hey, you need some help? I've done that at my house before. And he just went out there and helped him do it. And those types of investments and looking for ways to help people come back to you all the time.
Agreed, man. I love that story. That's a great one. Well, this is cool, man. We kind of jump right into the middle of your story here, but I want to get to it. I want to build up to it. So let's talk about where this began for you. Where did you grow up, and what was childhood like? I know I introed you with the talk of your family business. What was your family situation like with your parents and siblings?
Yeah, so I grew up in Lawton, Oklahoma, in the southwest part of the state. And my dad was in the military. My first memories really starting when I'm about 5 years old, I guess. My dad was in Vietnam and came back. He was a captain, resigned his commission, and went to work with his father, who was an entrepreneur, my grandfather. At that time, he had a mobile home sales lot. He had a fish and chips restaurant.
Nice.
And he went to work with him, and then he opened a motorcycle shop. So he sold Harley Davidsons, Triumphs, and BSAs there in Lawton.
Cool.
And it wasn't too long about when I was 6. Then my parents got a divorce. That was initiated by my mother. She felt like when he came back from Vietnam, he really wasn't the same person, and they just really didn't click anymore. And so, she didn't get much out of the divorce, because in 1970, when a woman initiated a divorce, she didn't get much out of it. So no alimony and $200 a month child support and 5 kids is what she got out of the divorce. And so we moved into a little tiny house. We lived in a nice 2-story house, but after the divorce, we moved into a 900 square foot house with single car garage, and she went to work. And
5 kids, all 5 kids with your mom?
All 5 kids. Yeah.
900 square feet, 6 people.
Yeah.
1 bathroom.
1.5. Yeah. There was a little half bathroom in the master. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
And she went to work for New York Life, selling insurance, straight commission job. And we had some tough times then. I can remember the electricity getting cut off. I can remember some nights for dinner we would have 1 frozen pizza for all of us to share. And she wasn't much of a cook. But we all had chores to do and things like that. And then she met my stepfather, and they got married within a couple of years of the divorce. And we stayed in that house until I went to junior high school, 7th grade. So that would have been like 1977 or 78. And then moved to a bigger house, and she started making good money on her insurance, got promoted to sales manager. And eventually my mother worked her way all the way up. She was the national sales manager for Laughlin Securities when she retired. Yeah. So,
oh, wow.
I really watched her hard work, and so she's always been very inspiring to me. And then, and my uncles, all her brothers were all entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
and very successful. And so I was always inspired by them as well. I guess my first money making endeavor was mowing our lawn. So we had a push mower, and my stepdad paid me $2 a week to mow the lawn starting when I was 7 years old. I could barely push the thing. And I saved up. I wanted a BB gun, so I saved up my $2 a week for 5 weeks. I had $10, and I walked to the Kmart and bought a Daisy BB gun. And so, I thought that was pretty cool that I had done that on my own, and I
Yeah.
think that really um, took me into the mode where I can work for money, and I can do this on my own. And so after that, I was like, when I was 11, I was pumping gas for $1 an hour at a full service gas station, the last one in town at that time. Then my dad, by that time, he had started a commercial drywall and ceiling company in Oklahoma City and was doing pretty well. And so in the summertime, starting when I was 12, I would go up and work for his company. I would just ride on trucks delivering building materials to job sites around Oklahoma. And so I'd load and unload trucks basically. And minimum wage, I think it was $2.13 an hour at that time. But I saved a lot of money in the summertime, and bought my first car when I was 15 with money that I had saved up, and started hanging sheetrock in the summer times, working for my dad when I was 16. Made really good money then because I was getting like carpenter union wages, $8.50 an hour.
Yeah.
In 1980, that was pretty good money.
Yeah.
And so that I was, preparing then to go to college. I did pretty well in high school, and wanted to go to Oklahoma. As a big Sooner fan,
Hmm.
and got into Oklahoma. Started my college career, and like everybody else, I was partying and doing crazy stuff in college, but I was able to maintain my grades pretty well, and just by showing up to class, I learned real quick if you just go to class,
It
you're going to
helps.
do okay.
It helps. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then in 1985, when the oil prices crashed, things got pretty tough in Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I can remember gas going from like $1.30 a gallon down to 59 cents. And at that time, my dad's business failed. He had big lines of credit for materials and stuff and jobs that he was doing, and the banks started failing, and they called in his lines of credit. He had no means to pay him at that time, and his business manager had taken a bunch of money, about $600,000, and IRS came. It was payroll withholdings that he embezzled. So instead of making the federal tax deposits, he was putting the money in his own bank account, and so IRS came after him, and he was nearly homeless at one time. He was living with his cousin after that. And so my life really changed then, because my path was, I'm going to work in my dad's business. We're going to continue to build his construction company, and that didn't happen. So I started working in a country club through a connection my mother had, just waiting tables, and did some bartending, and when I finished college, the food and beverage manager at the country club I worked at took a position as a general manager at a club in Enid, Oklahoma. And so he asked me to come be his assistant manager. So that was my first job after college, was being an assistant manager at a private country club in Enid, Oklahoma. And that's where I met my wife.
Very good. I'm curious. So that I want to pause right there. That time in Texas and Oklahoma, the Southwest was devastating, because my family had moved here in 1980. My dad worked for a construction equipment manufacturer that sold construction equipment into the oil field. And the
Yep.
first year we moved to Texas, 1980, oil was booming, right? The whole Southwest was booming. And he never made more money, I think, than that first year we moved to Texas. It was like, man, life is good. He's selling equipment as fast as he could sell it. And then, like you said, the price of oil tanks, and then all of the repercussion around, real estate starts to get impacted. Banks are impacted because people aren't paying their mortgages. Banks are failing. There's crazy S&L lending practices that have gone on during the booms, which typically will happen, right? Boom times make for kind of some chaotic decisions getting made. And then that all came home to roost. And so the state and the area, the Southwest, really went into a pretty big funk for a while. And it's hard to almost remember back that time, because you think about now Texas, Oklahoma is sort of recognized as this sort of like recession-proof market, always doing great no matter where in the country is maybe struggling a little bit. Texas is steady Eddie, consistent, thriving, but it really wasn't. At that time, it was devastating. It was terrible. And I'm curious what, you experienced that, seeing your dad go through what had to have been some really stressful times, not just, okay, you kind of cut to the end about, he lost his business, but there were nights and weeks and months in there where that eventuality was kind of playing out, that you likely saw. And potentially it obviously it didn't, or maybe it did in some way. It potentially could have made you say, well, I don't ever want to do that. Right. I don't ever want to be in that position. Because you saw the devastation. Could you talk a little bit about what your recollection was of when your dad was going through that, and then how that ended up kind of ending or shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, it cost him his marriage, cost him his business, and his second marriage, and it was, I saw some things in my dad at that time that surprised me, because he was always kind of this bigger than life guy. He's a captain in the military, fought in Vietnam, started his own business. One time he had his own airplane. I used to fly with him from Oklahoma City down to Eagle Pass, Texas, to look at, they're doing drywall and some mall down in Eagle Pass. And then all of a sudden, he's a shell of that image. And I guess there was some, I don't think I was ever shaken from the idea that I wanted to be in business for myself. What was most shaken was that I didn't have a clear path to do that at that time. Especially my vision of starting a business was, I've got to have enough money to invest to start a business. And it took me a long time to realize that wasn't necessarily the case. To the fact, when I started our company in 2009, we were broke.
Yeah.
We started with nothing. Like I said, I worked part-time at Home Depot. But I guess that was the biggest impact for me, was really just, I didn't see a clear path for myself. I didn't have a clear vision for, what my life was going to entail. The door to the country club business opened to me, and it's not something that I ever endeavored to do, but it was the next opportunity, and it was right there in front of me. So I took it. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Okay. So flash forward a little bit. So then you're working at the country club, and you meet Angela, and talk us through kind of that next phase of your professional and personal career, personal life.
Yeah, so I was pretty ambitious, and almost immediately upon working a year in that role as the assistant manager, I started applying for general manager positions, and I ended up getting an interview with a company that was Valley Innovative Management Services, which did. They were in the food service, so they provided food services for like college cafeterias, corporate campuses, things like that, hospitals, nursing homes. but they had kind of stumbled into doing consulting for private country clubs through connections with the CEO and his club. And so they decided to expand on that, and they hired me to come and be a manager at the Greenwood Country Club in Greenwood, Mississippi. And again, it was, it's like that was the opportunity that was in front of me, so I took it. And I'd just been married a few months, and wife was pregnant, and we moved from Enid, Oklahoma to Greenwood, Mississippi, and which was even a smaller town than Enid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was culture shock, moving into the deep South from Western Oklahoma was quite different. But I was pretty successful there, and helped turn the club around. And our daughter was born there, so we named her Delta. And then 3 years into that, I started looking for a job at a bigger club, and I got an interview at a club back in Oklahoma City. And I told my boss from Valley Innovative Services, I said, "Hey, just want to let you know that I'm interviewing for this job in Oklahoma. They may call you for a reference." And I was like, "Not that I'm unhappy here. I'm just looking to move up." And it wasn't long after that, he's like, called me back like a couple of days. And he's like, "Hey, I've got an opportunity for you at a bigger club in Monroe, Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
Would like to move you over there." And it wasn't too far from Greenwood. And so I went from a 300 member club to a 1,100 member club, and had a nice pay raise along with that, and a lot more responsibility. And so we moved to Monroe, and my son was born there, my son Wyatt. And so something interesting happened while I'm working there that kind of changed my path as well. When I took the club over as general manager, there was a young lady working there that was the catering director. And she wasn't doing a very good job, and she was just out of college. And her responsibility was to make sure that all our big events, catering events and club events, went off well, or planned well and went off well. And she was just gone all the time, and always it was like so and so's baby shower or wedding over here and stuff like that. So I didn't feel like she was taking her responsibilities really to the club really seriously. And I started looking at her resume, and I found out that she had lied on her resume. So I used that as a basis to say, "Look, we're going to replace you." And I knew it at the time, but her dad was a member of the club that I was managing. And so we fired her, and that didn't sit well with him. And he got on the board of directors. And so the board of directors was a 3-year stint. And he eventually got to become the president of the board. And, so for 3 years, he tried to get me fired, basically. He just hammered me in every board meeting. And so, about halfway through the 3rd year, I decided, this is really not any fun. I don't really have any control over my destiny here, other than I've just got to perform at a high level. And the kids were getting a little bit older. I worked all the time. I'd go to work at 8 a.m. I'd work most of the time till 10 o'clock or midnight, because I wanted to be in the dining room with the members, and that was just the way I was doing things. And Angela wasn't too happy with me never being there 6 days a week, pretty much. And so I decided I need to make a change. And I called my dad. By that time, he had started a home inspection company, and had a pest control license. And so we just kind of brainstormed, and I said, "Well, I'll get my pest control license, and we'll start a pest control company alongside your home inspection business." And so I started working while I was still working at the club. I started working on getting my Texas pest control license. So I would drive from Monroe, Louisiana to Dallas every Sunday afternoon, and work with my dad on Mondays, because I had to have I had to have 80
Amazing.
hours on the job training to
Yeah.
get my pest license. So for 10 weeks, I'd drive on Sunday to Dallas, work with my dad on Monday, and then drive home Monday night and then go to work Tuesday morning. And so did all that, got my education part of it done, took all the tests and got my pest license. And then we moved to Dallas.
How long is Monroe to Dallas?
It's about a 5 hour drive.
5 hours. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you're doing that every week, 5 hours, and then a couple of days, 5 hours back.
Yeah.
While you're already working too much at the club, right? Making your wife angry because
Right.
you're working too much. And so you're adding this in. So it's that whole notion of, I'm going to do this harder thing because it's going to lead me. I want it to lead me somewhere else, right? And I've got to pay these dues in the short term.
Yeah, and I can remember a discussion with Angela just saying, I want to be in business for myself, and this is the only path I see right now where I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about, if I want to be in business for myself, I have to have more resources, whether that's money or time or whatever it is. And I just didn't feel like I had the resources. And I said, well, here's a path. I can work with my dad, and that will lead me into owning my own business.
Yeah, it's interesting, this idea. So you think about your dad again, and he went through that really hard time, lost everything. His marriage, like you said, his marriage fell apart. And yet when you came back to his part of the story, he's got his own business again. So he didn't retreat into something quote unquote safer, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, he went back into this mode of, I'm going to own my own business or run my own business, even though he had seen really the darkest side of owning your own business, or a dark side, probably the dark side of running your own business, which is his family was impacted, his financials were impacted, and he had to totally start over. And yet he went back into that road. And then you also, having observed that, we're ready to go do that too, or had that vision of like, I want to go into this thing, even though you're working for a job that was paying you more money, you're moving up, you're getting bigger responsibilities. Country clubs are generally nice places to be. It's not like you're working, hanging, putting roof tile on a roof in the summer in Texas or something. I mean, it's a lovely place at a country club. And yet you're like, I'm going to go do something different. Right.
I took a huge cut in pay to do that. And I started, driving a pest control truck around spraying houses and crawling in crawl spaces and attics and on roofs
and with two little babies at home and a wife and
and my dad, like I said, he was basically homeless. He lived with his cousin for a couple of years, and what he did was he had equipment because he did drywall ceilings and paint and wall coverings during the last part of his business. And he kept some of that equipment. And he just started going to building sites around Dallas and talking to builders and say, hey, I'll do your painting for you. I'll do, if you need wallpaper, I can do that. And he's like, I'm not going to be as inexpensive as your Mexican crews here, but I'm going to do a great job for you. And he started getting work, and that's how he rebuilt his life from that. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty incredible, right? That he did that. And then I think about what you were doing. Did you crawling around in crawl spaces, uncomfortable, hot, spraying for pests. So you're dealing with pests and making a lot less money. Do you recall kind of your mindset in that? Was it like, this is the road I'm on at the moment? Or were you thinking, I need to be going back to the club? This is ridiculous.
Well, I did apply for a couple of club manager jobs at one point. I worked with my dad for 10 years. But it wasn't really because of the money or the circumstances. So more, it's just as I got more into it, working with my dad, and he had remarried, and his wife was working in the business, and we didn't have really good alignment on how to run the business and where the business was going. And so I was constantly fighting with them. But as far as the type of job, the work that I was doing, my goal was always the same, was to own my own business. So I didn't see a path to doing that, going back into a W-2 job. So I just had I don't know, singularity of focus, I guess. And I thought my path was I'm going to work with my dad's company until he's ready to retire or sell it to me. I made him an offer to buy it a couple of times, and which is they didn't want to do. So that was okay. And so here, kind of what happened, because I was just fighting with them all the time over the business, and we grew the business, pretty well. And but it wasn't what I want. It wasn't my vision. It was their vision for the business. And so one day I was driving around downtown Dallas doing my pest route. And I don't know, you remember, and I think she's still on the radio, Dr. Laura Schlesinger,
Oh yeah.
the psychologist, right? And so people are calling in and asking her questions, and she's giving them pretty harsh advice most of the time. Makes for good ratings. But this guy calls in, and I'm listening to her while I'm driving. And he says, I'm working in my parents' business. I'm going to take it over someday. But they just won't do what I tell them to do. The business isn't growing like I want it to grow. And we keep fighting all the time. And I was like, wow, this guy sounds just like me. And, I was very frustrated at that time. I wasn't really growing personally or really professionally. We were like $80,000 in debt. And she just told him, Dr. Laura just said, well, I guess you need to quit. And he said, well, I can't quit. I'm going to take the business over someday. And she said, well, then you have to shut up and do what they say because it's their business right now. And so those are your choices, quit or shut up. And so wasn't long after that, I quit working for my dad.
Interesting. Yeah. So you heard her speaking to you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you quit, did you start your own deal immediately, or what did you do when you quit?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was I quit at the end of 2008, which everybody remembers 2008.
Yeah, I do.
Bottom of the real estate market. And so I quit and started a home inspection company in
Man.
February of 2009. Yeah.
And we had just come through an unbelievable bubble in real estate. So it's
Yeah.
2007, which we upgraded our house in June of 2007. My timing is classically horrible when I make moves, any sort of moves like that. I left a pretty thriving corporate career in the spring of 2000, March of 2000, to join a .com. And if you think back to what was going on then, so we had Y2K, right? So January 2000, everybody thought the world was going to shut down because all the computers were going to crash.
Right.
So companies have been spending like maniacs in the late 90s to get ready for Y2K. Y2K happens, everything kind of goes on as normal. I don't think we had a single hiccup. We get into the spring of that year. So now past January of 2000 into the NASDAQ hit a high, I think of like 5,200 the week I left Ernst & Young, where I had been working, and joined this .com. And it was a straight rocket ship ride straight south, for the next 2 years while all these .coms failed. And that market burst. And then in June of 2007, my wife and I moved up, bought a bigger house, paid probably max dollars at the time that we could pay because it was at the height of everything real estate in Texas at the time. And then, like you said, everything melted down in 2008, real estate. That was when the dollar was going to roll over. I mean, the financial business, we had some big banks were failing. It was a glimpse back into the 80s, but it was not just Texas. It was, the U.S. and then I think even beyond the U.S. But yeah, a wild time. And so you chose that time to start doing services for real estate market, which was absolutely dead,
Yeah.
dead on arrival.
Yeah. And it really, I think it was a good time to get in. I mean, the first year was tough. We had very little savings. We had a little bit of money. I mean, Angela's father had passed, and we got, I think, a $15,000 life insurance benefit, and half of his 401k, which was about $10,000. And I used that money we used that money to pay for me getting the rest of my licensing I needed, and some other things. And I had bought a truck that was my grandfather's, who had also passed. I bought it from his estate. And 2 weeks after starting my business, I wrecked the truck. rear-ended somebody. So we're down to one car and no money. And so I got a job at Home Depot, and I wasn't doing a whole lot of inspections. I was doing some marketing, but the inspections weren't rolling in. And so I was working for, I don't know, like $7.50 an hour at Home Depot. And Angela was working with Aflac, and she was pretty successful as an Aflac agent. She was like number one in the state in new groups and stuff. Did really well. And we borrowed a car from a friend of ours so we could both get around because both our jobs required driving. And so, yeah, that first year, I think I made about $35,000 doing home inspections, gross revenue.
Yeah.
And she called me in October of that year, and she said, "Hey, Aflac is offering me a district sales manager position." And I said, "Okay, are you going to take it?" She said, "I think so." And I said, "Great. Can I quit this job?" I was at Home Depot when she called me. And she said, "Yeah, I think so." And so I turned in my resignation right then, and they let me go right then. They said, "That's fine. You don't have to work your 2 weeks out." And we had saved up a little bit of money. So we went and bought a 1997 Ford Taurus for $2,000, I think. And that gave us our second car. Our friend that let us borrow a car was like, "Hey, I need my car back." And we're like, "Okay." So
Right on.
went and bought a little car. And then later became my daughter's first or second car, I guess. But the next year I did better, brought in about 80,000 the second year. And so things started rolling, and Angela's job allowed me to really focus on the business more than I was able to while I was working at Home Depot and going back and forth. And so things started growing. By 2013, I felt like, well, I was busy all the time by 2013, and the kids were getting older. Felt like I needed to make more money. We wanted to cash flow their college. We didn't want to borrow money. And so I decided I need to build a company that we had the resources and the time and everything we needed to do that. Felt like I was kind of late to the game. How old was I then? I was nearly 50, I guess. And so my mindset then was the first thing I need is somebody to answer the phones, because I'm answering the phone while I'm doing inspections. I can remember laying under a house in a crawl space on my back taking inspection orders, or up on a roof. Or we were in New Mexico, and I was up on a mountain and taking inspection orders while I'm on vacation. And
I mean, that's yeah. Just interrupt you for a second. It's the idea of being self-employed or really owning a job versus owning a business, right? So what you're describing is, and it made me think of it when you were in the early part of the conversation. We were talking about your inspectors and this ability. Like, some of the guys are making a lot of money, some are making less, and the ones that are making more are choosing to take more inspections and to do the extra things to get more inspections. But ultimately, they're exchanging time for money, right? So it's this idea that, well, I can get paid X dollars per inspection. How many can I get in my day? Well, if I'm going to make 150, I have to have more in my day than if I'm going to make 60. But ultimately, I'm limited by the number of hours in the day and my ability to do the work, right? At some point, that number maxes out, because the market only bear an increase in price, or you might go, well, that's my best guy ever. I'll pay him maybe a little bit more money per inspection than another guy. But at some point, it's time for money, and that number kind of maxes itself out until you take the mindset of, if I get people working around me and for me and doing some of the work, well, now the ability to make more money or even to have more time freedom you get that leverage, right? So now it's like, I can choose to work or I can choose to not work, but the money's still going to be there. And it's an entrepreneur. The first person's still entrepreneurial. They're controlling their destiny by virtue of how much they want to work. But the other mindset is more what I would call truly an entrepreneur, not just either solopreneur or a self-employed person, which is, how do I build systems and processes that enable me to now either not work as much or make more money than the day will allow.
Yeah, and we kind of failed our way into building some systems and processes that ended up being a big part of our growth. So the first person I hired was somebody to answer the phones and book inspections and do customer service. And I should have been better at hiring. I'd hired a lot of people as a manager of the country club, but the first few people I hired were disasters. And the first inspector that I hired, I didn't give him any training. I just said, he rode with me on one inspection. We got along okay. I said, great. Here's your inspection report template and software. Go out and do inspections. And I immediately just started getting complaint after complaint after complaint from the realtors. And I ended up firing the guy, and he's still a home inspector today. But I ended up firing him, and it was my fault. I didn't provide him any training or anything. And so I was like, before I hire another inspector, I've got to have a training program in place. And so, like I said, we failed our way into, I got to have a good system for getting inspectors in the field that's going to produce a product like my customers want. And so I did that, a pretty simple thing. We wanted the inspectors to ride with me on at least 100 inspections before they did anything on their own. And, there were some systems inside of that, or some processes in the way I trained them. And that proved to be really successful. So then we got that in place. And the next year I hired 2 inspectors. And part of my idea came from, I had worked a little bit with Angela and Aflac, and I was not good at cold calling on businesses. I didn't take the time to develop that skill. I was just like, they'd say no, and I'd say, great, see you later, and walk out, But I had looked at Aflac, and I was really interested in the way this insurance company did compensation. It was like they had a policy with a premium, and then that premium is cut up. The agent gets the bulk of it, and then their district coordinator gets a smaller piece, and then the regional coordinator gets a smaller piece, and on up the chain. And so I thought about how can and I saw how that incentivized everybody. Everybody was invested in each other's success, right?
Yep.
And so I tried to kind of duplicate that with our inspectors. So I created a program where once I got them trained and in the field and they did 200 inspections on their own, then I would put a trainee with them, their job to train them, get them ready, get them in the field, and then they would earn a percentage of their trainees' production after that.
Yep.
And there was nobody else in the industry was doing that, and that was a big bottleneck for people. Like the biggest companies in the industry at that time had like 8 or 10 inspectors. I think the biggest one here in Texas had 16 people working for them.
Wow. Yep.
And so, and one of the bottlenecks was they usually had one person that did all the training. So they could only train one new inspector at a time. And that training period might be 3 or 4 months or sometimes longer. And so I started putting trainees with every inspector that I had. So I hired 2 inspectors the first year, and then 4 the next year, and they're all in training at the same time. And so we were able to scale up our workforce pretty rapidly. And so our capacity was there, and the real estate market was helping. It was growing again. And Angela was doing the marketing by then. She joined the company in 2013. After I didn't have good success hiring people to work in the office, she said, I'm just going to quit selling insurance and come work with you.
Oh, wow.
And so she did that. And
so she left a very big job with money that had been really well, not necessarily carrying, but certainly funded the early days of the business, enabled you to go all in on it. And she walked from that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that? Like what that was like?
Yeah. I mean, she was getting, insurance is a tough business. She was cold calling 20 businesses a day, every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, walking into them, not on the phone. She was doing some on the phone, but normally she was most successful walking into 20 businesses a day. And healthcare reform was coming up then, Obamacare and all that. And so people just didn't want to do anything. So sales were suffering because there was just so much uncertainty in the insurance market. And so she had tried to get me to come get out of the inspection business and work with her. And like I said, that just was not my arena. And so she just said, fine, I'm just, after two bad hires of admins working for me, she just said, I'm going to quit my job and come work with you. And of course, that was a big catalyst to growth too. That's when we changed the name to Super Inspector. She came to me. The company was originally called Clear Creek Inspections. I named it that because there was a creek by our house called Clear Creek. And she's like, look, this name, nobody knows what it is. They know who you are. They don't know what your company name is. We need to change this. And she was already working on a campaign of superheroes, like a Spider-Man inspector on a roof or X-ray vision, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And so we said, we're just going to change the name to Super Inspector. And we made that change in 2013. And so, yeah, just having her in the business and bringing that sales acumen into the business, and just that, it's my business kind of attitude. So she was driving around to real estate offices and at the same time answering the phone and booking inspections while I was out doing inspections and training inspectors. And so, yeah, that was a big jump for us, just having those two processes, the sales and marketing process, and then the training process for new inspectors, is what really helped us grow rapidly that first 8 years. It really took off. By our first original goal was to have $1 million in annual revenue and have 8 inspectors. And as we were discussing,
was there a timeline? Did you have a time goal for that?
Yeah. So the timeline was in 2 years.
2 years.
We didn't get there in 2 years, but and our discussions around that, I started thinking, well, we need to be able to recruit and attract and retain great people. I don't want to have a revolving door of inspectors. It's a relationship-driven business. Realtors develop relationships with their inspectors. And I said, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to provide opportunities for people to grow inside the company. So we have to be constantly expanding the business to provide that opportunity. And that's really our mission now today. Our mission statement is to provide opportunity and super experiences to our team, our clients, our real estate agents, and all that we serve. That's our mission statement. And so it evolved from that. And so our next goal was to become the biggest, largest inspection company in the state of Texas. I think we achieved that. Greenworks has passed us now. So we're playing a little bit of catch up with them, but we need that, right? We need that rivalry.
Yeah, right on. Let's talk about, you've mentioned goal setting and having that initial vision of, that $1 million and 8 inspectors. Talk about that, setting that bold vision and what that's like, and how you've approached always having that vision forward, and then the steps needed to accomplish that. Because I know that's a big part of your story and growing the business, was always thinking outside of the box. Not, I'll go ahead and overuse saying, but this idea that you're trying to be unique in a market that was very fragmented. I think you said the biggest inspection company at the time had 16 inspectors. You've now got over 100, and so what is it? Talk about, I guess, setting bold vision and then coming up with and determining the steps to accomplish that vision, like how that's worked for you.
Yeah, I think the vision really came from it had to be that in order for us to be successful. It's like, what does this need to look like in order for us to succeed? And so, and that's where I felt like the company has always got to be growing and expanding, else good people are not going to stay with your company. And that's really where the vision came from. Now, I've always thought that clarity of vision is the number one key to success in business. If you don't have a clear vision of where you're going, what is it Dave Ramsey says? If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, right? But the vision was really born out of, what do I need to do to create a great company that is going to provide the life that we want to live. We love to travel, and financial security. Daughter was getting ready for college, like I mentioned. We needed resources for that. I saw the life that my rich uncles were living, entrepreneurial lives, and I was inspired by that. But really, the driving force was wanting to own a great company where people wanted to come to work every day, and just having a great culture. And in order to do that, you have to have a company that's growing and expanding. Otherwise, the culture dies.
100%, right? Yeah, and I talk about this a lot with some of the clients I work with, which is this idea that there's no such thing as staying the same. You're either growing and expanding, or you're shrinking and dying. That's the only two options. Because if you're not growing, somebody is growing past you, which by definition means you're getting smaller, you're shrinking, and people are considering leaving, moving out, or going to those other places, and that can become a death spiral really, really quickly. And yet it requires constantly having your foot on the gas or in the gas to some degree. And when you're doing that, there's risk. There's always risk when you're pushing into new unknown territory. Always, right? For me, when I left a corporate job, when you left your country club corporate job, there's risk. And the only way, there's a great expression that a friend of mine, Walter, introduced me to, which was, in order to discover new oceans, you must consent to lose sight of the shore. Right. And it's great and fun to build the boat and stock it with supplies and have these great thoughts. But until you push off from the shore, you're not in the fight and you're not in the game. And then even when you're out to sea, as long as you can still see the shore, there's this temptation, this idea that I've got safety behind me and I can always go back. But this idea that if I'm really going to discover new oceans, I've got to push over the horizon to where I can no longer see the shore behind me. That's how we really discover new ground and become something new and different. And yet it's scary, man, because there's risk over the horizon, right? We don't know where the storms are even coming from. But it's that ability to say, I'll figure it out, that for me becomes the thing that I've learned in hanging around with a lot of entrepreneurs. It's this ability to go, or this confidence in, I don't know what's coming, but I will figure it out. I'll figure it out. Even if we end up, hanging onto a scrap of the boat once the boat's sunk, I'll figure out a way to get from that scrap of the boat that's left to the next thing that will enable me to create a new boat and continue on, So I don't know if you have any take on that in terms of risk and how you continue to be comfortable pushing into the unknown and pushing into risk. And
it's really about courage, like you say. And I began to understand really through my faith in Christ that, there's really nothing that bad that is going to happen, even if I fail. The confidence that, the worst thing that's going to happen, even if you die, that's not the end. And, I really leaned into that, especially in the early years. It's like, what bad's going to happen? It's like people get gripped by fear, which is driven by the subconscious mind that's always trying to keep you safe. It's always trying to maintain your position within a hierarchy. It's always trying to keep you surviving and away from danger. And so overcoming that fear is really about understanding that there's nothing in this world that is final, or that is not, that you can't recover from. That we live in an abundant society. I'm not under threat of violence very often, if ever. I'm not under threat of a grizzly bear attack. Even though I do hunt bears.
Yeah, occasionally.
Occasionally. But it's just like, what is the bad that's really going to happen? So and especially in the home inspection industry, which is the bulk of our business, when we first got into the industry, it was very much the common practices were based on fear of liability. Every inspector is worried about getting sued. They were either bragging that they'd never been sued or they were worried about getting sued. And I got sued the first time in 2009 by a surgeon who had bought a 9,000 square foot house down in Arlington. He had bought from a car dealer, and I did the inspection. And he got into I don't have to go into the story, but it was a big renovation project, and they found some problems after they tore the walls open, and then wanted to collect money from my insurance company. And when I got served that lawsuit, it was like I got sick. My stomach was wrenching. But then you find out, hey, this is just part of the game, and you understand that there's really not a lot to be afraid of in failure or in life in general. You've got if you've got faith, then you've got a great partner on your side, and that really allowed me to push through. Not that I don't ever get anxious or don't ever have a day where I get grumpy because I'm worried about something in the business. That happens often, but I'm always able to reground myself. I can remember that first year when I wasn't getting a lot of inspections and I'm working part-time and we're borrowing a car. On Sundays, I would just drive by the church, the empty church, and I would go inside and just sit there for about 15 minutes and do some praying or whatever. And then I'm back out and I'm ready to go and hit it again.
Man, I love that. I so appreciate you sharing your faith. It's such a critical and key component of my life as well. And I think you're spot on with your assessment there. It's like we have these fears of what if I lose? And it's really fears of, I think, two things: judgment of others saying, oh, look, see, you failed. I knew that was a bad idea. Or I'm taking some pleasure in the fact of seeing you fail because I never really pushed into that risk myself. And it makes me feel better about me and my choices when I see someone else take a chance and fail. So we don't want that judgment. And then we also fear losing the kind of quote unquote stuff, right? I don't want to lose my house, my stuff, my money, my car. I don't want to have to do hard things, right? Human nature, you said it very well. We're pre-wired, hardwired to seek safety, to not get eaten by a grizzly bear, to do the things that keep us in our place in a hierarchy. And that's how we're hardwired to survive. And yet we're really never at true risk now of getting eaten by a grizzly or those other things that our body's trying to prevent. But the reality is we will lose it all at the end, right? We will go out of this world just like we came in, naked and with nothing. And if we don't have faith in a savior, we're really, if you're playing in this world for this world, it is going to end badly regardless, right? It's just going to. And so, but having comfort that we are saved, that this isn't the place we're playing for, that the world is the world, and it will pass by and we will move on, is the thing that someone with faith can lean into. Again, like you said, it doesn't mean you don't have anxious moments or that you're not trying to prevent catastrophe from happening or something happening to your family or whatever. But it's the comfort of knowing that even despite all that, I'm redeemed and that I'm saved, and that life goes on after the life in this world ends. And that's a real powerful thing. And leaning into faith and into prayer when you're struggling, and even when you're not struggling, but is a beautiful piece as well that you shared there. Like when I'm struggling, I went into the church and I found peace there, and then I went on back after it. Such a powerful thing for people to hear, and I appreciate you sharing that.
To me, it just emboldens to know that that you have that no matter what happens, you have that salvation. So that just gives me courage to continue on and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it's St. Augustine or this quote is, your heart will be restless until you rest in me, right? It's And I think that's true. You know, it's like we find ultimate rest and comfort and peace in Christ, and anything short of that is not lasting, right? Anything short of that is not lasting. You know, I do a bit of, you know, in the Go Abundance program. There's the Emerge program. A lot of those guys are slightly earlier in their professional endeavors, or they're contemplating leaving a W-2, and this question of I'm afraid, or I'm you know, when's the right time, and when am I ready, and I'm doing all this work, kind of getting ready, but I'm having trouble actually stepping out. Do you have any thoughts there in terms of, you know, words of advice for someone that's contemplating a big career move or a change, and when to take the leap, when they're ready, you know, or any guidance for those that might be listening from that audience?
Yeah, I think, you know, a good portion of what people do to plan something like that is wasted time. You're never going to plan for every variable, everything that's going to come by the pike. The best way to figure out what you need to do is to start doing it. I'm not saying that no planning, but the person that you're describing to me is kind of the paralysis by analysis, the perfectionist who never does anything unless they can do it perfect. And that turns into procrastination. I'm going to put it off because I need to do more planning. I need, like I was doing initially, I need to have more money in the bank. I need to do this and this and this. They're always putting something in front of them starting. And it's the same thing, you know, if we're talking about a new product or service, you can spend years developing a new product or service and then put it out in the marketplace and it falls flat. You know, Apple puts out the first iPhone or several of their iPhones that are not perfect, because what they want to do is they want to get feedback from the market. And the same thing is true for an entrepreneur. You just have to start, get the feedback from the people you're trying to serve, and then keep going, making adjustments based on that feedback. But you just have to start. And starting for some, and even for me, you know, it took, like I said, I felt like I was late into the game, you know, because I kept waiting for that perfect moment when I had everything together. But just getting started is one of the hardest things you can do, but it's all mental. It's based on fear, like we were talking about, fear of failure, fear of being looking bad, fear of losing my spot. And there's a quote by Sadhguru. He's a yogi in India who has a lot of content online. But his quote was, "Fear only exists in the past and in the future. Neither of those things exist."
Mm.
So the past and the future, you know, the past is
Yes.
done. It does not exist anymore. The future hasn't happened yet. And that's where fear lays. I'm feared of what might happen, or I'm afraid of something that happened in the past is going to come back.
Yeah.
And so once you start recognizing that it's a subconscious thing that's gripping you, you know, going back to faith a little bit, you know, we look as Christians, we look as God in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And I think, and we're created in that image. So I think we have the same three persons within us: the mind, the body, and the spirit. And the mind I'm talking about the subconscious, right? The subconscious mind that controls the body and can take control of your thoughts is where all that fear lies, because it's trying to keep you safe, trying to protect the body. And the spirit lies outside of that. That's your soul. That's your rational mind, your conscious mind. And so if you can allow your thoughts to, or at least try to have your thoughts always be rational. So understanding that fear is not a rational thing. Yeah. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. It's never as good as you think it's going to be. You know, just move forward with confidence that no matter what it is, I can deal with it. I can fix it if it goes wrong. I can adjust. I can step back here. And, you know, I've got people beside me, whether it's my family, my friends, my wife, my God, whatever it is, that are going to help me no matter what.
Love that. Love that. Blake, what are you excited about, man? What's coming up for you with the company or with yourself? Yeah, you and Angela personally. What's lighting you up right now?
Yeah, so right now we're really focused on building our business in a way that is investment grade. We're not necessarily looking to exit the business, but we want to. There's a quote that says, operate your business like you're going to own it forever, but build it like you're going to sell it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so that's really our focus right now for our business is we want to make it an investment grade business because the business will be way better if we do that. Whether we decide to take on investment or not, we will have a business that performs at a high level. So that's where our focus is right now. And then personally, we've got 4 grandkids now.
Nice.
And so I set some goals on my calendar, some dates on my calendar this year I've got 2 boys that are 11 months apart, Irish twins that my daughter has. And so they're 2 and 3 years old, but I want to get them in love with the outdoors. So we're going to do some backyard camping and some hiking, just, around the lakes around here, nothing big. And then I'm going to go out my son is in Salt Lake City. So we bought a inspection company in Salt Lake City last summer, and he moved out there to run that company. And he's got 2 kids and a little girl and a brand new baby boy. So I plan on going out there to do the same thing with them, do a little bit of camping and hiking in the mountains out there. And we're looking forward to a lot more travel in Europe. My wife especially loves to go to Europe. And we're planning on going to Spain the first part of May. But that's really our focus is getting our business investment grade so that it can leave a legacy. Eventually, we want to have a $50 million a year business. That's our vision for the business right now. We want to leave a legacy for our kids and grandkids, and for all the people that we serve. That takes a lot of work within itself. And so that's our challenge for right now is to get that business investment grade and leave the legacy that we want to leave.
I love that, man. I love too that you take time for travel, right? I mean, so it's real easy, especially as you're so goal focused and building and growing, to just think, man, I'm going to hammer down. Like I got to be in this thing every day, keep hammering down. And yet the reality is life's going by, right? Years are going by, and we only get one opportunity to live the one we got here on this earth, right? Like we said, there is beyond for us. Yet, taking advantage of the opportunities and the time to step away from the business, be with your wife, enjoy some travel, enjoy your grandkids, your family. If we're only focused on that single myopic view of financial wealth or business success and to the detriment of all other aspects of our lives, you can get to that finish line and be fairly empty, I think, and fairly disappointed. And man, I think Steve Jobs on his deathbed, right? I don't know if he was a billionaire, but certainly if he wasn't, he was close. He probably was. Was like, I wish I had spent more time with my kids. I wish I had spent more time with my family. I hadn't worked so much, and I think that's a common sentiment on people's deathbeds is I wish I had done more of that stuff. Didn't work so much. So I love the fact that, the things you're highlighting, while you highlighted some business things, you're also talking a lot about family and travel and life and living with your family. And that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, and the travel piece really flows into the business nicely. So if you start talking to private equity investors who might be interested in helping you grow your business, one of the things they're going to ask you is how much do you travel? And if you're in the business all day, every day, to them, that's a negative for the business. They want businesses that run without the owner. And so if you're there all the time in it, they're not that they wouldn't invest, but that's a red flag for them.
Yeah. Great insight.
And the other part of it, honestly, is we want especially our executive leadership, we want all our people to live a full life and travel when they need to, to relax and refresh themselves. And we want to inspire that within them. So, I don't hide our travels from our team. I post pictures, hey, we're going to Europe and all this stuff. And we want to inspire people. And if that's inspirational for some people might see it as, braggadocious or whatever. But what it's really meant to do is say, hey, there's more to life than work, but do a great job while you're here, but also take care of yourself, take care of your family, and live an abundant life. And part of our why, I mentioned our mission earlier about opportunity and super experiences, and then we have a why that goes along with that. Our why is we believe that opportunity gives life purpose, and super experiences make life worth living. And so we want everybody in our company to have that. And if you want to find out how good a job your executive team is doing, you'll find out when they leave for 2 weeks, right? Or 3 weeks or whatever it is. And what'll happen is more work will get done in that 1 month period before they leave for 2 weeks
Right.
than gets done for the 6 months before that, because they're preparing. They want to make sure everything goes well while they're gone. So a lot of things that might get pushed to the side normally all of a sudden start getting done.
For sure. Blake, where can people keep up with you, man, or get in contact with you or track your story or that type of thing?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook.
Just your name, Blake Williams, or is there another way?
Yeah, just Blake Williams. Yeah, we have company pages there too. You can find out more about our company at superteamservices.com. So we do home inspections, pest control, HVAC, and then our newest endeavor that we're really excited about is our mastermind and coaching business that we just launched with some partners, with some Go Bros, actually, some GoBundance people, Dirk Van Reen and Chandra Rao and Colin Anderson, along with me and Angela. And so this is a mastermind group for company owners who have multiple lines of service like we do. There's unique challenges to that type of business. And so we want to help as many people as we can grow their businesses and achieve their goals and live the life they want to live.
What's the name of the mastermind?
Multi-Service Mastery. And you can find out more about that at multiservicemastery.com. We have a 2-day live event happening March 27th and 28th here in Arlington, Texas, called Mastery in Motion. So you can find out more about that on the website.
Fantastic. We will definitely get those links in the show notes and make sure folks can get connected with you super easy that way. So, Blake, It's been a great conversation, man. I so appreciate you sharing your family story, your life story, and everything you're doing in the business. Really appreciate it. It's been an honor and a privilege to have this conversation, my friend.
Well, thank you. I always enjoy talking to you, whether it's just at an event or one-on-one. Really enjoyed our conversation as we were sitting in the deer blind a couple of weeks ago. That was a lot of fun. So
it was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Yeah, and the deer meat has been fantastic. I don't know if you've had a chance to eat yours yet, but man, I've been enjoying all that as well. So that's been great. But thanks so much again.
All right. Thanks.
And to our audience, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to the show. Always appreciate that you do that. If you would share the program with a friend, write us a nice review, give us a rating. All those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.